Okay, now that we've learned a little something about setting up a scene, let's learn a little something about characters and animation. What we have right here is one of the characters from my library that I've created. The rigging that you see is what you call a cat rig, and we're going to learn all about that in a little bit. But first we're going to start with a little blocky character. Blocky characters are kind of cute and they're kind of easy and simple to make if you just follow along and follow the instructions. We want to make a blocky character first, because if you look at this character here, over here in the Scene Explorer, you'll see that she's rather complicated. She's got long chains of dependent relationships. Plus, if you were to look over here, we have a whole new tab to deal with, and that would be the motion tab. And in that, there are all kinds of controls and levels for this character that, well, like I say, the learning curve on it is rather steep. It's not that it's hard, it's just that we want to learn a few basics first. Besides, when we're making cartoons, sometimes we want things to be, well, a little bit more cartoony, and these characters tend to be more realistic. Okay, well, let's get started. Let me go ahead and delete this character. Let's build a blocky character. Let's start by opening up a brand new Mac scene. So go to your desktop and open one up fresh. And since we're opening it up fresh, we want to go ahead and set up our viewports. So each viewport, you should go ahead, default shading, display selected. Once again, wireframe to default shading, and then display selected with edge faces, so forth and so on. The other thing we're going to do is make sure that our units are in feet and inches. So go to the customize, the unit setup, and make sure that US standard is selected and you're using feet with decimal inches. Finally, let's save the project. So we're going to go to the file and we're going to go to save as. Make sure that you are in your scenes file on your own student drive, and you can save it as your last name, your first name, project 3A, and blocky. Let's go over here to the command panel, and we're on the create tab. We're going to go from the standard primitives over here to the extended primitives. In the extended primitives, I'm going to grab a capsule. I'm going to take it out, draw it out, draw it up. Right click so I stop making capsules. Let's take a look at the parameters of that. I think I want the radius to be about 1 foot and the height to be about 4 feet. The sides, I think I'm going to make it a little bit more complex, just that way if I want to customize it later, it'll give me more to play with. So 32 sides, and the height segments, I'm going to change that to 16. That should give me plenty to work with. The name, I'm going to change. Now, instead of it just calling it capsule, because we're going to have a ton of capsules, I'm going to name it after the character. So I could call it Blocky, but I think I'm just going to call it Fred. And it's going to be Fred Body. Not because Body is its last name, because this is going to be the body of our character. F for front, and I'm going to take this gizmo and I'm going to move it up a little bit. So watch. Come on over here to the hierarchy tab and go to Effect Pivot Only, and then we're just going to move it up to where the curve hits the flat part. Right there. And then we're going to select this again. Sometimes that happens just by accident, that you'll see that your gizmo looks like that. If it ever does, just go to your hierarchy. You'll notice that this has been selected somehow or another. Now that that is selected, I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that into the center of my world. So zeroing everything out, 0, 0, right click, 0. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the pelvis. So just going to shift copy this right here, and I'm going to let it be a copy. And where it says Fred body, go have Fred pelvis. Say, okay. And here I'm just going to add that extra F on there. I didn't mean for that. There it goes. Back to the pelvis. I think what we'll do is we'll make the pelvis just fit right in here. And so I'm going to go here and make the height 2 feet instead of 4. That will bring it down to a regular sphere. I'm going to center it, just like so, and maybe just lower it just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit. Okay, we should be all good. Now it's time to start setting up the relationship. So the pelvis is going to be the center of everything because the legs will rotate off that and the body will rotate off that. So let's see here. What we'll do is in your Scene Explorer, you're going to take the body and you're just going to move it over to the pelvis. Just like this, holding, moving it down. Well, moving it down, you can see that, into the pelvis. And now we've started our change. So we've got the pelvis to body. Good enough. Now let's make the shoulders. So once again, I'm going to shift copy right on over and call it Fred shoulders. I think I'll make the shoulders about 1/2 foot. So 0.5. And as far as length, I think that about, 3.3, let's say. Maybe something like that will do. Okay, and that pivot, I'm going to put the pivot into the center of this. So, here we go. Here's the hierarchy. Affect pivot only, and then center to the object. And you see that puts it directly into the center. Unclick that again. Okay, if I zeroed it out, then I could just go ahead and move it up, maybe right about where the curve starts, and then I'll rotate it. I'm going to turn on my angle snap so it makes everything easier. And I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Wonderful. All right, I'm also going to take a look at this to make sure that the resting position is at 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to take a look at that pelvis, that pivot point again. By the way, the pivot point is the center of the gizmo. See where it comes together right in the middle, or right here? That part, that's the pivot point. It's on the point on which everything turns. And so I've got it here on my rotate gizmo, and I can see that it says 90 degrees. I don't want it to say 90 degrees. I want it to be resting right here. So I'm going to say Affect Pivot Only, and I'm just going to zero those out right there, because that's where I want it to be when it rests. And that way if I turn it 90 degrees or 45 degrees, it will go where I think it's supposed to go. Okay, turn off that pivot effect. And maybe back to my Modify tab. Okay, all good. I think the next thing I'll do is make the arms. Oops, but before that, I got to set up this chain. So if the body went into the pelvis, then the shoulders are going to go into the body, just like so.